everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Strength for the Journey Ministries broadcast. My name is Jerry Burt, and we have a brief segment today that we want to share with you entitled Making a Place for Our Youth in the Ministry. Today we have a special guest joining us, Miss Lamekia, Nicky, Jarman. How you doing today, Nicky?
How you doing? How are you?
Doing well, doing well. And I just want to say this about Nicky. Nicky is a mother of 4 children. She is a wife, a mentor, and a youth advocate, and she is also the founder and president of More Youth Movement Incorporated. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, Nicky, tell us a little bit about yourself and share with our viewing audience some things that most people don't know about you.
Okay. I am a native of Goldsboro. I graduated from Goldsboro High School, so Cougar Pride.
Okay.
I have worked in the mental health field for over 22 years.
Wow.
And before starting More Youth Movement, we have been mentoring kids through and in our lives, through our children, for about 10, 15 years. And when we decided that I was changing my career path, that was the first thing that God placed in my heart, is for me to do what I was passionate about. And before, I was doing what I thought I was passionate about, but it was a whole lot of red tape involved. So I was working for the government. There's a certain way that you have to do things each time. But by working my own program, I could learn a child, their family, and I could service them the way we felt like they needed to be serviced. So that was the beginning of More Youth Movement.
Okay. So, so exactly what is More Youth Movement Incorporated? How is that structured, and tell us a little bit about that.
All right, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. More stands for maximizing our real experiences.
Okay.
And we serve students ages 5 through 19. And we do what is called a peer-to-peer mentoring.
Okay.
All right, so the way it's structured is you have adults who have been trained to work with youth that mentor teenagers. And as we mentor the teenager, that teenager turns around and mentors a younger child.
Okay.
And then those children have examples to look up to. Our program is different than most. It does not stop at 5:30.
Okay.
So if a parent is having an issue with a child, say they're getting in trouble at school or mouthing off at home or something, that student has to face me and my husband when they see us the next day.
You and the husband?
Me and my husband. We do this as a team.
Okay, and your husband's name is?
My husband's name is Aaron C. Jarman, Jr.
Okay.
So if a student is getting in trouble at school and mom or dad can't get off work, they don't have to worry about that. We show up. If a student is excelling in school and mom or dad can't get off work, they can't come to an event, they don't have to worry about that. We're sitting in the stands.
Wow.
What we decided to do, a lot of people talk about change, and we all want to see change. We want to see things differently. But a lot of people don't roll up their sleeves to lead that change. So we've developed small pockets. We only work in small groups. So a small number of students, like 5 to 10 to 15 students at one time. And we pour into those teenagers so those teenagers can pour into younger students.
Okay.
And then we kind of orchestrate what activities that we do. All of our activities are based around what teenagers are interested in, what they're going through, what they could be exposed to. They're all global experiences. So if we have a global awareness, a mission that we need to talk about, we are addressing that with our teenagers, who can then address it with our younger people. So if a teenager is having issues and possibly going to experience an adverse situation, now that young person can text that teenager in the middle of the night and say, I'm struggling with something. Then that teenager goes and lets me or my husband know, or our other adult volunteers, and then we can help that teenager as well. So it is a core group that supports the family and strengthening the home.
Wow. And I guess it's your background in mental health, or that where you birthed this concept with this model. Is that how you came about it?
Yeah, I even forgot to mention that. My background, my undergrad is in psychology, and my master's is in counseling.
Okay.
And before, I primarily worked with adults when I was working in the mental health field. But what always interests me is when you were doing a briefing with a client, which is the first time that you meet them, they always got stuck in their youth. When you started talking to them, like, what problems did you have? How did you get incarcerated? Well, this happened, and then I was 13 and 14. I made a wrong decision, and now I've been locked up for 10 years. Or you started falling behind in school. Why didn't you get some help? Well, I kept falling behind in school. My mom and dad were working all the time. My grandmother was keeping me. She couldn't help me with my homework. So we started seeing a pattern. So I started to think that we need to start meeting our kids at a younger age and meeting their needs. The only way to really do that, Jerry, is to have a circle around them. And it can't be a circle of 40-year-olds or 50-year-olds or 60-year-olds. It takes all of us. So you take those core adults and then you put teenagers in front of them, because the youth are inspired by the teenagers that they see.
Okay.
And then they're directed by the adults that lead them. But we have to be leading them to something.
Yeah.
So that was the whole focus of creating more.
So let me just go to the question I guess a lot of people are concerned about in this community is, why do churches have so much difficulty, traditional church, why do they have so much difficulty reaching the teens and the kids today?
You said the key word, traditional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because traditional usually means a certain way, a certain box, a particular way, a particular, and a lot of times kids don't feel like they have a voice. This generation has to be heard. I grew up in a generation where kids were to be seen and not to be heard. Nobody cared about what you thought. And to a certain extent, we parent that way, but at the same time, times really are changing. People say they are not that much different than what they used to be, but they are. We have to figure out a way to reach these young people. And I can tell you that it's changing, or we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. If it was easy, everybody's churches would be full of teenagers. But it's not. So we lose them because we don't let them have a voice. Yeah. And by having a voice, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on, but by having a voice, what I mean is accepting them. Not saying that you approve of their lifestyle, but accepting them the way they are. Yeah. So like today, I purposely wore jeans with 2 holes in it. Traditional church. Okay. Most people, this wouldn't be allowed. Wouldn't be, right. We actually had an event going on one day, and I had my oldest daughter go to a church to pick up one of the students. They wouldn't let her in the threshold of the door to pick up the student because she had on jeans. She didn't have no holes in it. She just had on jeans. But that's what we're doing. We're locking the kids out of the church. Not with the key, but with our looks, with our not accepting them, with our attitudes, with our remarks. And they are listening to us by not showing up.
Wow. You know, it's kind of painful to hear the reality, and you certainly are on the pulse of it. But it's painful to many of us that work in ministry to hear the reality that the reason a lot of our youth don't want to be a part of the ministry, they don't want to participate, is because of some of these things. So, well, what would you tell a church that's really just getting started in terms of figuring out how do we provide a ministry that would attract youth? So I guess the question would be, well, what attracts youth to an organization of youth designed for youth, or a church ministry that's reaching out to build a youth ministry? Okay.
My background and our reality is that we have to take some of the pressure and the rules away. One, we need to get in our cars and our vans and we need to pick a pocket of youth to go pick up. You have to be invested in the youth, and it can't just be a Sunday thing. When we connect with youth, whether it's through my organization or through our own church, because we are youth ministers there as well, or youth leaders, when we connect with kids, it's got to be over a bonfire. It's got to be at Starbucks. It's got to be, can we ride to the mall? It's got to be, I'm coming to check you out at the basketball game tonight. It's got to be, I saw you cheer. You have got to be in their everyday lives. I saw you on Instagram. Girl, I saw you beat that girl's face with that makeup that looked good. You have to have a relationship with this. It cannot just be Sunday when you're laying hands on them and praying for them and you don't have a relationship. This is the problem that we have in Goldsboro that I feel, and I sit on a lot of committees here in Goldsboro. And we're always passing out hot dogs. We're always like making these big events. And a lot of times we're giving hot dogs to people that can get their own hot dogs. They're looking for a relationship. They're looking for mentors. They're looking for somebody that can speak into them, that can see something other than what they usually see. And it's not just the kids who are in the low income housing. A lot of people get stuck there. There are children at Rosewood going through the same thing, but it looks different because their parents make more, or because they live in a house versus an apartment. But all these teenagers, they're on this. They're connected to this one box. And within this one box, one child can tell another child what to do on the other side of town. We have no connection with them. We have no relationship. We don't know anything because a lot of us won't take the time to get to know them. So one of the biggest problems in our community is relationship. And if a church opens its doors, we've got to learn how to accept people, not approve of their lifestyle. Because you have to love people. You have to show them the love of God. But while you're showing people, if you're saying, sit up, do this, every other day, every other word is a direction. It's not really love. You can do that later after I have a relationship with you. Then you can start correcting me. But we're going to have to be comfortable enough to let kids come in and be themselves, not be disrespectful. That's not what I'm saying. That's totally different. But we have to allow kids to be themselves before we start putting dictations on what they do. And we've got to pull our sleeves up and do the work. It's got to be after church. It's got to be before church. We have to do events for the youth. We have to change our music up. We're going to have to put some other kind of paint on our wall. It's not going to look so traditional. These are some of the type of things that draw youth in. They want a place that they can call their own. And if it looks like, to be frankly, the oldest member in the church, if it pleases them, it probably doesn't please a 16-year-old. So if you can have a place that's comfortable and a place that they feel like they can be themselves, you should have a basketball court. You should have a lounge area, screens, video games, things to interest them. Those are a good start, and lots of snacks. And games, what we call icebreakers. At our church, we have an icebreaker before every service. And that might be somebody running around squirting somebody with a water gun. It could be somebody getting pied in the face. And to some people, that's like, oh my God, we don't do that in church. That's not what we do in church. What we do in church changes lives. It changes lives. So sometimes we have to have fun to get those youth in so that we can teach them about God, because what we don't do, somebody else is doing. Somebody else is making their environment fun, and it has nothing to do with God. And God is fun. God does believe in laughter. God does want our children to learn. He wants them to learn from us, but we make our environment so critical, sometimes so sterile, sometimes so harsh. And then our kids go out there to get their answers instead of coming here. And if we can be fun and we can be a safe place for them, and then we can say, you know what, baby girl, I seen how you talking to that boy. Let me talk to you a little bit. Then you can pour into them. But we're so ready to do surgery on somebody before we even get a background on them.
Wow. Wow, that's really a lot to take in.
I'm sorry, Jerry.
No, I appreciate it. No, we really wanted you to just feel free to just share with our viewers just, your perspective on what some of the issues are. Because one thing I've learned about you is that you are, your life is committed to working, to mentoring kids, to coaching them, to helping them spiritually grow. And you obviously serve as a youth leader in a progressive church here in Goldsboro. So you have a committed life. Your life is committed to youth. So
It is.
I want to listen to what you have to say because it's out of the box in terms of the traditional ministries that a lot of churches are operating, and we have a difficult time growing a youth ministry and seeing the youth that we have want to stay in our ministry. So thank you so much for just sharing with us your insights on that. Was there anything you would recommend? I think you said some things that would help a church that is starting from ground zero. But what are some of the things that churches that already have a church ministry can do to kind of upgrade? Because the physical structure of a lot of our churches are not designed for youth ministry. We want to put them in what we have, but we don't have the space designed for them. And that's a little shocking for us to hear that they have to have their own space. Yeah. And I know you guys have that. Tell us about what you do at Bethel.
Bethel's awesome when it comes to ministering to youth. We have our own building, and our kids decided on what the paint color wanted to be. They decide what the stage should look like. They decide what snacks we bring in. And we have a whole committee of individuals from all different ages. People think because they're a certain age that they can't work with youth. If you're a certain type of personality, you shouldn't work with youth. If kids get on your nerves and everything they do make you cringe and you wish they would be quiet and they bother you just because they walking, that's not your ministry. So we really have to say, Lord, I know this is not my ministry, and be in another ministry, first of all. But at Bethel, we're very committed to youth. We do this whole background check with you. And then we do this test or this assessment to make sure this is where you want to be. And then one of the questions that sticks out of my mind is, why do you want to work with youth? And my reason was I wanted to be what I needed when I was a youth. My mom worked 16 hours a day. And my father, we never had a relationship. We still don't. And I'm 42 years old. Wow. And for a long time, I was hurt about that. And I would pour myself in a whole lot of different other things. I am really a testimony because I could have done so much differently with my life. But I stayed focused on my grades. I played every sport in high school. And I was just trying to get a scholarship so I could go to college. I went to college, I got my undergrad, and I got my master's degree. But I was making wrong decisions along the way, and I didn't have anybody to pull me and say. So I could have got off the path really quickly. And so what you have to do is stay committed to bringing adults in who will share their real life experience and not make it rosy. When I tell my students my real story, it's my real story. It's not something I Googled. It's my life. And you have to be transparent with teens. So if you seem like Mother Teresa to a teenager, they're not going to click with you. I never did nothing wrong. I never talked back to my parents. I never kissed anybody. If it's always I never, you're not going to connect with them because they don't feel like you're being real. But what we do is we put a group of leaders together. And then those leaders are there to walk out life with our students. And it's not just at church, like I was saying before. We have leaders where we'll have sleepovers. We take the kids out hunting. The girls will have a girls' day out. We've had summer camp where the whole church was closed down for a week, and it was all about the youth. We take them on trips out of town. We take them to ice cream. We go to the mall, all different types of things that our teenagers are interested in. We go to the movies together. You've got to have a group of adults that are there when teenagers need you. And you're going to get some pushback. Teenagers are kind of fickle. They're trying to fill you out while you're trying to learn them. And sometimes they'll do things to end your relationship or break your relationship, but you're an adult. So you should be able to speak into them and say, I see what you're doing, but you know what? I'm going to still be here tomorrow. We have to be consistent. And what I've seen in a lot of churches is that we are not consistent. If youth numbers start declining, we allow them to decline. But everything else we're aggressive in. If anything else started to decline in this church, you would get somebody to repair it. If the bathrooms were not working, they would be repaired. If people started seeing ties going down, we would get up and talk about it in the pulpit. But we won't go out and go get our students. Students are all around us. And a lot of times it's not the kids' fault that they can't come to church. A lot of times it's the parents. It's the parents because we're the responsible ones. But sometimes we're working. Or sometimes we don't go to church. At our church, we get a lot of students whose parents have never been to Bethel, ever. But we pick them up every week and drop them off at church and then bring them back home. As long as you're pouring into that child, that's what matters. That's how we change our community, by making real connections that affect somebody's life. And that way, when a child is having an issue, they pick up the phone and talk to you instead of sexting somebody, instead of getting wrong information from one of their friends. They say, Mr. Jerry, I know it's 12 o'clock at night, but I'm having an issue. Can I talk to you? And I know it works because it happens at my own house. I get those phone calls. My husband gets those phone calls. Both of my older two children, they get those phone calls. So it's not something that we do to post or to brag about. It really is our lifestyle. And for a church that wants to grow, what I would say, and this is the last thing that I have to say, it has to become your lifestyle, not a motto. That's not what kids are looking for. They can see right through it. If you really care about them, if you really want to grow your youth ministry, it's got to be about building relationship with them first.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Nicky, we call her Nicky, Lamekia Jarman, sharing with us some powerful, powerful ideas and strategies and some solutions, and just, helping you to think out of the box. So thank you for helping us with our topic, making a place for our youth in ministry. Lamekia, thank you so much for joining us, and come back and see us again sometime, okay?
Thank you for having me.
Okay. God bless you, Nicky. Thank you. And we'll turn it back over to you, back to the Strength for the Journey broadcast, where you're listening to the Reverend Dr. Kenneth J. Tate. God bless you.